And I want to get into kind of how you got into this space because you have these two books. You are a very elite level endurance athlete, right? You have run in 40 marathons and performed in 15 Ironman triathletes. Is that right?
That's right. You do your sports medicine doctor can't be a slug is
Uh,
my
I mean, you can be,
tag.
but thank you. Thank you for living up to it. That's amazing. And in fact, we just were in New York City, and you literally rode your bike over here, so totally staying on brand. But when it comes to like motivation and movement, what makes you like? What? How did you go down this pathway, and what makes you an expert in this space now?
Sure, great. So I'm a sports medicine doc, and I've been here at Hospital for Special Surgery in New York for 26 years, my 26th year. And as I started, I come from a whole family of doctors. I have three brothers. Everybody's a doctor. Both my parents. One was a medical doctor. One was a psychologist. So everyone's in health. And I started out in medicine, eventually gravitating towards sports medicine. And as I got there, the beginning of my career in sports medicine was much like I hurt my knee. What's your knee injury? I hurt my shoulder. What's your shoulder injury? How do we diagnose it? How do we fix it? Over time, I had this whole separate life, played soccer in college, was very active, and and was really kind of had these two separate worlds, the world of being a doctor, stuff's broken, and the world of being an athlete, like let's get out and be healthy. And there were these two very separate circles in my life. Over time, I realized that I wanted circle one and circle two to get closer together. There wasn't really a mechanism to do that. And so I started very slowly building fitness into my medical practice. And so I started teaching these really small fitness classes like 15, 16 years ago. One of my patients was a general manager at one of the gyms here and said, hey, listen, Sunday afternoons, no one's around. Why don't you come take the gym space for an hour? And I got like 10, 15 people and we started doing these plyometric based strengthening classes. I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't know how to put together a playlist, didn't know exercise, didn't know how to teach. I knew nothing. And I started teaching these classes and I realized that my knees hurt less. I performed better and it was great stuff. And so then I started building out this fitness community over the past 15, 16 years. We now have 56,000 members in our community. We run about 26, 27 workout classes a year, mostly around here, but all over the place. We got more than 12,000 people moving last year. And in the process, I've learned so much about how to not only take care of the body on the doctor side, but also how to think about motivation and motivational health. And so those first two quotes really say it all because the theoretical is Gandhi. You must visualize the change. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. That sounds great. But if you don't commit to getting off your ass, nothing will ever change. And so you have to really think about both those things together. And a big piece of that is how do you understand motivation? And I guess my last sentence, sorry for talking so much, is that motivation as a concept, like, all right, I'm motivated or I'm not motivated. I actually, when I went into this project, I thought everybody was either motivated or not motivated. I actually don't believe that's true anymore. I interviewed a whole host of my patients from all age groups, particularly some of these 80 and 90-year-olds that are out walking around Central Park, exercising every day. What's their secret sauce? And what I've come to believe and understand is that motivation is something you can kind of teach yourself to master. And that's what push is all about, is how do you learn to understand and master your own motivation, which is something everybody can do.
I love that. So funny story. I started listening to your book and I just recently had this conversation with a family member. I won't say who it is because they're not going to like that I'm saying this, but they called me and they were like, how do I get better discipline? Because they're all about like, I need better discipline. I need discipline with exercise. I need discipline with food. I need discipline with, my sleep hygiene. And I actually had a hard time answering it. And then as soon as I heard where your book was going, I was like, oh my, this is perfect. So I sent her the book. I was like, you should listen to this. But help me out here because I actually had a hard time with this. Motivation versus discipline. How do you divide those two up?
Yeah, I think that motivation is they're essentially part and parcel of the same thing, and they can manifest themselves the same way. Discipline is almost a pejorative term, like he is disciplined, he's not disciplined, she's disciplined. Motivation is something I really think you can change. They reflect on each other quite a bit, but my conclusion on motivation and motivational health is that if we have somebody that comes to see us with a hurt knee and we get an MRI of their knee and oh, you tore your ACL, it's like I know the mechanism of injury. I know how it happened. I know what their knee exam is like. I know what their knee x-ray and their MRI shows me a torn ACL. And then we have a plan what to do. Motivation is murky. Like, right. You can't say like, you're motivated. You're kind of motivated.
Right.
You were motivated. I had it. I lost it. I want it again. So it's very difficult to it's like pin the tail on the donkey and it's always moving. And so And the first thing about motivation is it's a difficult concept to try and figure out exactly where it is.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, how do you kind of make it work for you? How do you make your motivation or your discipline work? And I prefer the term motivation more than quote unquote discipline, because I feel like there's a lot people can kind of embrace in motivation, and I think it's a changeable thing. And so I talk a lot about understanding why people may be struggling with their motivation. They don't feel it, they don't live it, um, and then they don't maybe understand it. And then I think there's a lot in terms of the barriers people put up. What I call lowering the cost to act in the book is a great concept. It's a behavioral economics term on what does it take to change your behavior pattern. Because if it's hardwired into you already, it's in you. But if it's something you want to try and change, how do you go about thinking about strategies to make it change?
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me when you were describing motivation in the book was that unlike discipline, which again, it's binary, right? Like you either are or are not. And most people are not because it's hard. But motivation, you're always motivated for something. And this was the switch for me that made me think about her, which is you're always motivated to do something, right? It might not be something good. It might not be to achieve the goal that you think you're trying to achieve, but you might be motivated to go eat that cheesecake or motivated to stay up all night and binge watch Netflix. Motivation is never lacking. It's directing the motivation. And that was a great trigger for me to think, oh, well, how do we then just create the change in the inertia and the motivation? Because I don't know how to tell somebody to be disciplined.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's great. Yeah, how do you channel quote unquote healthy motivation? And I would also say that, just like as we started our discussion today, like I came over here, like I live in New York City. It's actually the best way to get around by far is on the bike. You can sit in traffic, or the best way to get around. I bike everywhere. We have like a bike share program, and it takes 2 seconds to get any place. But it's kind of built-in activity. So how do you figure out what are the things you can do in your life to really change your motivational profile to where you want to be in terms of, you know, activities, sleep, nutrition, friend groups? There's a lot of ways you can start thinking about how do I strategize my motivational tendencies. And I think that's what we're kind of thinking about.
Yeah, you've got some great tactics in the book. In order to frame this, you actually said one other thing that I think really stood out to me, which is you described the health span lifespan gap, which I describe it in a different way, but I like the way you described it. So tell us about the health span lifespan gap, and then let's use that to frame the
Sure.
rest of this
Sure,
conversation.
sure. So the idea of health span and lifespan is how long we live. And, I talk a lot about, and I just had an article that just came out actually today in the Atlantic about this idea that we're quote unquote overselling longevity, meaning longevity science is being oversold. And the reason I say that is that much of the work on longevity has already been done. That if we were alive like in the early 1900s, our life expectancy sitting here would be about 42, 43 years old. We'd be done. I mean, that's it. Great time. Nice knowing you. See you later. Right. Um, but now our life expectancy is generally about 80, 81 years old. So we've doubled it in the last 150 years, which is incredible. That's longevity science in its purest form. And a lot of that's done. Now, when I go to some of these longevity medicine conferences, they talk about living to 120. Most of it's BS work done in animal models. And most people I know don't want to live to 120. They just don't. That being said, I feel like much of the work on longevity is done already, and that there may be some thought around the margin. Like a nice analogy from Central Park is like if I have somebody who wants to come see me that wants to ride their bike faster around Central Park, and they want to get like a $15,000 Pinarello super fancy racing bike. And I'm like, dude, 99% is not the bike. It's like your body and your fitness and your conditioning and your strength and your intensity training. Maybe 0.5% is the bike. And it's the same concept. So with longevity as a concept, most of that is probably mostly done at this point. There's a lot we know about it. Now that's different than what I call healthy longevity or health span, how long we will live healthily for. And that, unfortunately, is a gap that is getting wider in the United States, not narrower. And that's, we're living longer. And also we had, health problems that were exacerbated by, the pandemic. And we saw people that were unhealthy, and then people are moving less, people are exercising less, people are getting more overweight, work from home, remote, everything. They don't have to move for anything. With every technological advance, we actually move less and less. And so there's a lot of factors in here that are making people less healthy and widening that lifespan, health span gap. And so to me, the message I want to give is talking a lot about how do we maximize our health span. And the best way to do that is the first quote in the book. Get off your ass every single day, move. That's by far we have the most evidence on exercise
Yeah.
as a big piece of this equation.
I want to come back to exercise because I just wrote down most powerful tools. I want to come back to that. But you and I were talking before we hit record on some of the probably least effective tools, and I want to dig into that because I've gone to a lot of these I speak at a lot of these conferences, and I speak after people that will stand up on the stage and say like, let's live to 120, let's live to 180, which, again, like without a good health span, I'm not looking forward to that century of poor living. um, I think some of the technology is really interesting. I think the theories are interesting, but there is this trend that I've noticed over the last 5 years when I've been going to these conferences, that it has become very tech forward and very industry forward and not so much research forward.